good afternoon, Carl.
Greetings, Michael Kitces. Michael Ernest Kitces.
Yes. So how has
Hi.
conference season been for you? We've been out for a while. We're kind of coming through to the end of the year, probably just past the end of the year by the time folks are hearing this.
Yeah, it's been busy and fun. Like, it's fun to see people again. Really fun. Yeah, XYPN was a blast for sure. Super good.
Yeah, I feel like there was this shift in the second half of the second half of 2022 that just, for better or worse, we seem to have moved past the pandemic and like back to pre-pandemic life. Like, just whatever you're doing with the pandemic, you've done at this point. And we just seem to have kind of returned to this stable new normal. So for me, like, conferences, it was really nice. Got to be out for XYPN Live, for Schwab Impact, got to visit a couple of different FPA chapters, and just felt it everywhere I was out and about that just we seem to have returned to a new post-pandemic normal.
Yeah, it's super fascinating just to see what that will develop into. And, what's that old saying that people make plans and God laughs?
Yes.
So it will be interesting to see, like, what's the things we're not thinking of.
That's an ominous way to think about 2023.
No, like in good ways.
All right. We'll take
right. Like all of the good things that have happened to me were not planned. So I think it's going to be super interesting to see what I meant was, like, what does return to normal mean? Like, what's that going to actually mean? Because I don't think it's 100% the prior normal for 100% of the people. You know what I mean?
So it's like in that theme of thinking about like coming year and changing our normals. So, like, one of the things that I'm finding is cropping up a lot, we're seeing it in the research we do on advisors. I feel like a lot of it's just out there in the discussion, the advisor world, like all this competitive pressure, all these dynamics of basically like, what are you doing for that fee you charge your clients? No, really, what are you doing? Like, what else are you doing? Like, what else are you doing? Because we got to stack all these things on top to justify our value for what we're doing.
Right.
And so one of the ways this is starting to show up is firms building out these various versions of service calendars for clients. And I'm a big fan of the approach. I like the approach, and it says, like, we're going to come up with the things that we are proactively going to do for our clients throughout the year to show our value. Like, maybe I'll do a capital gains summary report in March to send out to the CPAs. Like, we're going to do a review of your insurance beneficiaries, and we're going to do an end of year tax planning meeting and Holista plan, and like all these different items, generally very planning oriented because we're trying to get away from just the portfolio side of things. Some firms are doing them semi-annually. Some firms are doing them quarterly. Some firms have built out monthly. Not that we're meeting monthly, but, like, we'll give you a check-in on your IRAs 1 month and, like, touch base about your employee benefits another month. Like, things that often we can systematize to some extent with our staff and team support if we built to that point. So it's not all on us and our shoulders. And the idea of it is, look, we get more proactive with clients, more touch points, more opportunities to show value. Even if we reach out and they don't need anything, we still get credit for the fact that we reached out about the thing. Helps to show value. I had this great question that came in from Meg, who had said, like, I'm chewing on this balance of, so on the one end, there's like regularly scheduled, proactive client service calendar stuff we do. Look at all the things we do for you every year. Like, clearly we're worth this fee. Then at the other end of the extreme, like if I take the logical extreme, is like, here's my value proposition. When something happens in your financial life, I'm here to help and solve it.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know when it's going to come up.
Right.
We all know if you work with clients enough time, like, stuff happens. And when you get as an opportunity as an advisor to drop in those moments, like, you can have, life-changing impacts sometimes when people go through big transitions, some of which are not always planned, and a whole bunch of stuff goes in motion and change, and a whole bunch of challenges crop up. And it can be really impactful to have a financial advisor there, so much so that you can almost make the case like all the other stuff doesn't matter as long as you do that when you're there to do that. Now, most advisors I know don't go quite so extreme as like, I'm there when you need me. That's my value prop. Like, think most of us feel some pressure. Got to do something else in between along the way. But it raises this really interesting question of where you draw the balance in between the two. Because in the logical extreme, like if you make a service calendar that's like proactive enough every month of the year, you will do something for your clients all year long. And if they ever actually have a problem that crops up where they need your help, it's like, oh, I can't help you right now. Like, sorry, we're in the middle of our January value adds. Like, I can't do that. I can meet with you next month. Oh, actually, I only have a tiny bit of time next month because we're going to be working on our February cycle. And so if you get proactive enough, it's like you could be so proactive to clients that you show value out the wazoo until they actually have a problem and you can't help them. And so to me, I don't know where the balancing point is to that. I mean, Meg had raised the question to talk about. She said like she's not sure where the balancing point is as well. But I think it's a really interesting dynamic to talk about between this balancing point of I'm just there when you need me, however often you do or don't need me. And we have a very proactive, highly structured, ongoing client service calendar. And we're going to crush you with the sheer amount of value that we're providing on an ongoing basis, where you might be so proactive you actually can't be reactive anymore. So I don't know if that dynamic, like that split resonates to you. It really struck me when Megan reached out. And look, I don't think most people are at either extreme. Like I never do anything for my clients unless they call, or like every hour of my year is obligated. But as a lot of firms are trying to get more proactive on service calendars and the like, I think because we're feeling some of that fee pressure and service inflation effects, like the pendulum seems to be swinging towards the proactive. And it's hard to argue against proactive until Meg raised this question. Like, yeah, that's actually a good reason to not be too proactive.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a list of things and you can decide which one to talk about. So without diving into, one is Kevin, my friend Kevin, who actually built one of the most successful businesses that I've ever seen in our industry. And his entire business model was service model, entire thing, rapid response to customer questions, client questions.
Okay.
That didn't do anything else. So he was on the extreme. No anniversary cards, no birthday cards, no regular service, just rapid. He's like, most of our industry doesn't do that. That's all I'm going to do. Amazing. So Kevin, fee pressure and service inflation from who? Like, who are we actually hearing that from? I'm super interested in that. Like, are we solving a problem that doesn't exist? I'm curious, given the retention rates, that you have, like, I'm curious. I don't know the answer. I'm super curious about it, because is this just us all deciding that there's fee pressure and us all deciding that there's service inflation, or is that a real problem? And then the third one, the third one, which is interesting to me, super interesting, is, and I've seen this with a bunch of stuff. Like, if you promise me that I pay $20 a month and I get 100 widgets a month, and 100 is so many, like, so it's like, oh, I get so many widgets a month, it's amazing, and I repeatedly only use 30. Or let's just say I use 50. I use 50 of the widgets and I'm paying $20 a month. There's a really interesting reverse sort of psychology thing that happens, because I've seen it in businesses we've built. We get feedback like, you're giving me too much value. I'm going to unsubscribe from this service because I'm getting too much. I can't keep up with the value. That is fascinating, right? I can't keep up with the value you're giving me. So if instead you had told me it's $20 and you get 22 widgets a month, and sometimes you use all 22, but you're mostly using 18 or 20, the price and my value are feeling really good there, right? So I may even feel better if I pay $20 a month and you told me I get 22 widgets a month and I really want 25 and I use all 22 every single month. And there's some correlation there with information and service. And Carl, I'm not using all this stuff you're sending. It doesn't, 80% of this doesn't even apply to me. So that's that. And then the last thing I want to tell you is I remember one of my clients said to me, when I would send out these like topical And again, this does not make them wrong. It's just a discussion. Everybody who's going to send emails, please settle down. Like we're just having a conversation. Remember one of my clients when I would send out these topical pre-programmed things that I wrote, like they were good. I thought they were good, but they were pre-programmed. And I had a couple of clients say to me, hey, Carl, you know what? What if you just call me if you think that applies to me? Or what if you just sent that to me? Would you do me a favor? Just send me the stuff that applies to me. So those are the, where do you want to go with that?
132.
You're gonna have to remind me, Kevin.
So because I'm fascinated by this. So as you framed it, like Kevin's business model, Kevin's success framework is rapid response to client questions. You got an issue, we really are getting back to you fast.
Yeah.
Which I mean, I don't even know, like, I mean, how fast are we talking? I mean, it's like, what is
it was like somebody always answered the phone.
Okay.
Right. And he made it a point, like that's the job. So it wasn't like 24 hours. I don't know. I can't remember if he ever promised like by the end of day, but it was like, you knew that if you sent an email, you were going to get a reply. The reply sometimes would be, hey, it's going to take me 2 days to work on this. I'm on it. But it was always like rapid response. They would drop everything to take care of client questions.
Which I find fascinating. It's just, right, when I think about that from the client end, I mean, look, there are clients whose problems just aren't that urgent. There are clients who just like, yes, I like good service, but I'm not paying extra for that. Or like, you're a professional, you're supposed to respond in a timely manner. Like that's supposed to be table stakes.
Well, let me mention one thing real quick. He didn't tell clients this.
He like, just did it.
It wasn't like he was running around waving the flag, like, I respond to your question. Because you're right. Like people, but you and I know that the bar is super low. All you have to do is say please and thank you and do what you said. And you're ahead of 80% of the population in any industry, not just ours.
I'm presuming that means like Kevin ended out with a disproportionately high rate of referrals and the such, because clients would just say like, yeah, he's great. Like just I ask him questions, like he gets back to me really quickly. And then someone else says like, really? Because I haven't heard from my advisor in 4 months. It's like, and Kevin gets the referral.
And I can't get my advisor even to return my call.
Yeah.
Right. And he would say things like, yeah, I in fact, I had a client once say to me, Carl, I didn't hire you to just coordinate my social calendar with client appreciation events. He's like, I have no interest. Like I got friends. I don't need to come to your events. And again, I love my events. So I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I'm just saying interesting.
Yeah, well, different clients, different preferences, but for the clients, it's like, look, I mean, I guess it's a version of the scenario that Meg framed as well, right? Like Kevin's model is, I'm there immediately when my clients need me, and that's the deal.
It's so powerful to me. Just even your face of like that's so.
What else is there to say? Like
that's what I love about that. I mean, I'm a fan of this kind of stuff, admittedly. Like crazy idea. As simple as possible, slightly hostile compared to what everybody else is doing. Like all of that stuff I'm a big fan of. But yeah, and I'm not saying it would work for everybody. I'm not saying it's what you'd want to build, but it sure worked for Kevin.
Well, so to me, like that leads in an interesting way, I guess, to the second point that you raised. I mean, this dynamic of like, whose problem are we solving? And particularly, whose problem are we solving given how high most of our retention rates are? And I think I think it's a good way to frame it, because I don't know any advisory firms offhand that have seen a material increase in attrition rate over the past few years, aside from a few of us that got a little bumpier in market volatility just from the market environment. But outside of, there's always a few clients that are a little squirrely, that get a little squirrelier in volatile markets. Like, I don't know advisor individual, and I haven't seen anything in industry data and research that says like, we're literally starting to lose clients now because we're so not valuable on an ongoing basis that, geez, we better start doing more value-y things to retain all these clients that are starting to flood out the door. What I do see though is a very broad-based challenge that growth is harder than it used to be. Getting new clients is harder than it used to be. Because we used to say, I do comprehensive financial planning and I provide holistic services and I'm a fiduciary and I only charge fees and all these things that a lot of advisors in the advice domain in particular spend a lot of years differentiating on. And there's just so many people doing that. It doesn't differentiate you anymore. It doesn't distinguish you. And the thing that I feel like I am seeing emerge is for a lot of advisors when growth gets harder and it's becoming more difficult to win new clients and you're trying to figure out how to get more clients, that the go-to answer a lot of us have is, well, I just need to do more for them. If I just did more, they'd like me more. They'd want to work with me more. If I could just show them more stuff that I do, the value should speak for itself with the sheer like sledgehammer of value I'm going to hit you upside the head with. Let me show you my service calendar. And someone's going to like tweet sledgehammer of value now. I just realized I'm going to probably own that for a long time to come. And like, look, again, I love proactive service. I love systematizing and scaling. So like, I don't want to be negative at all around more proactive value. But just I will say, like, when you ask this question, like, what problem are we trying to solve? Actually, I don't think it's a retention problem because I don't think it's showing up in anyone's retention. I think what's happening is a lot more of it's getting harder to win clients. It's getting harder to grow with new clients. If I could just show them that I do more than everybody else, then they'd want me and like me and hire me. And I think it's coming from that place. I don't know if that resonates to you at all.
Oh, I agree that it could be coming from that place, but I don't think that's, I don't like, that's a whole nother discussion. Like, I don't think that solves the problem of growth.
No,
I think but I agree that it feels like I think it's a way to solve a problem for growth. I don't think it's assuming that anybody cares about your client service model.
No,
I don't buy client service models.
Well, I don't think people care about like literally I have a client service model. They care about like, look at all the stuff that you do and the value you provide. I can add up the value in my head of what that is, and it adds up to more than your fees. So I guess I'm willing to pay it. I mean, I think it's reasonable as a way to try to go out there and get more business, with the caveat that Meg indirectly has highlighted is like, until you do so much of that it actually creates other problems in your business. Because what I find a lot of advisors doing this, like, you know, I mean, it's a version of the conversation we had a couple of weeks ago. Like, if you really want to give above average service because you've got like this super amazing, awesome above average client service calendar, you got to charge above average fees because you need more revenue to hire more people to do all the stuff. If your business model is we do more work for everybody and we do more work than the average advisor while we charge the average advisor, it literally doesn't work on a sustainable basis. Like, you can't do more than everybody else for the same money as everybody else, or you're just running at best a less profitable business. And at worst, when a market pullback or some other hiccup happens, like, you don't have a sustainable business anymore. And so I mean, I think it's a reasonable thing to say I'm going to differentiate by doing more for my clients. Like that's not necessarily a problem, but we don't always do it in a healthy way, or perhaps we go overboard with it, which I think is a version of what Meg's question highlights as well. Like, you could go so far that you will lose your clients to Kevin because you gave so much awesome value 12 months of the year that Kevin won your client away by responding to them quickly the one time that something came up that you couldn't do quickly because you were in the middle of your January thing.
Yeah, I think it's, Michael, it's super important here to distinguish, like, we're talking about ongoing service models.
Yes.
And not upfront, not the first.
Yeah, this is
like
not the upfront. This is
Kevin
the like
Kevin
years 2 through 30 after the
Kevin did a ton of work to get people on board.
Yes.
The same work that we all do, like all that stuff.
Yep.
And he doesn't market with rapid response to customer questions, but it ends up being the only thing anybody cares about. So let's not lose track of where we are, but I just want to circle back to, you know, business development through promising more, like, you know, demonstrating that I demonstrate a lot of value because look at this menu. Yeah. And is it reasonable? Sure. Is it a reasonable way to approach this problem that growth is getting harder? Sure. I would just point, and I really don't want to take us down a tangent on marketing and business development right now, because I want to go back to these issues. But my suggestion would just be to, again, are we solving the right problem?
Yeah.
Are we asking the right question? If we think making a longer menu of client service, not even longer, just clearer, more demonstratable, maybe longer, more robust, more valuable, all the words we would use. If that menu, if we think that will help us, and I'm not saying it won't, I'm just saying if we think that will help us solve the growth problem, then the beautiful question is, are we solving the right problem? And I would just suggest the framing in my head is, I've never woken up. No client, no human out there has ever woken up thinking, gosh, I have a client service problem. Like if my advisor just offered a more robust client service model, what they wake up with is a financial question. Or a financial quote unquote problem. They don't care about your solutions. They don't care about your proposed. What they care about is, can you solve my problem? And so I think now the way you demonstrate solving that problem could be, yes, look at this menu. Okay, we can have that debate conversation on another podcast.
When you got a consistent clientele, a consistent clientele with a consistent set of problems, ideally your service calendar literally just is all the things they're dealing with.
Yeah.
On an ongoing basis, in which case you're covering the topics they need anyways. I think to me, like, I guess the distinction, even as I'm thinking about it, like there's two versions of annual client service calendars I've seen that crop up. The first is, hey, there's all this stuff I do for my clients every year. They all ask about it. They need the same stuff. I'm having the same darn conversations over and over again. Why don't I just systematize this into a standard model? So instead of just, hey, I end up producing tax reports for a whole bunch of my clients because I try to work proactively with their CPAs because I do that already. Why don't I just make March the month that I produce all the capital gains reports and systematically send it out to all the clients? Because I'm basically doing it anyways, but I could systematize this way more, and then I could highlight and promote that I do it. And I'm not adding work. I'm not doing different work. In fact, I might be streamlining the work by taking the things I already do on a fairly consistent basis and just doing it systematically. That's one version of service calendars. I'm standardizing what I already do.
That by the way, is relevant across the board.
Yes.
So that's to me, that's the important piece. Relevant to each client.
The second version is essentially more of this growthy differentiation version. Like I'm trying to get more growth, so I got to show that I give more value. So I'm going to do more and more things to show more and more value so that they'll more and more want to work with me. That I think just starts to potentially create the problems, A, because it's easy to go overboard on that, as I think Meg's question directly highlights, and B, because as I think you frame well, Carl, like what's the real question or issue that you're trying to solve for? I mean, I think for most firms, what it comes down to is what I'm trying to solve for is differentiation. So I can differentiate by doing more.
Yeah.
I can differentiate like Kevin does, which is being faster response. I can differentiate by having some deeper specialization, just being more awesome at problems for people like you, whatever you are, like whatever that niche specialization is that I have. I mean, we did a version of this in our Kitces research and found like the average niche advisor charges significantly higher financial planning fees and does less comprehensive plans. Their plans cover less. Now they're really, really good at the things they cover, right? Like if you specialize in tech employees, you can give a better options and RSU analysis than anybody else is out there. And you know what else is cool? No conversations about Social Security, no conversations about Medicare. It's a whole bunch of stuff that you don't have to talk about at all because all your clients have one commonality. And if you're super awesome at doing that, you can show up better than any other advisor and actually have to do less because you can be better at what matters for them and just exclude all the things that don't actually matter for them. So,
I feel like that is largely like I find myself saying more and more these days. I don't even know how to talk about business development with anybody if you don't have a niche or a niche. And so I think that's really true. I mean, the one thing that I think is interesting, if I don't have, so I love the framing you've picked here of like, all right, let's just pretend like you have a niche. Let's just pretend like you do. And you're going to take the things you're already doing anyway, and we're going to systemize those. Awesome. Amazing. And then my version of client service model would be like, well, then what if I set aside the same time I was going to send out this month we're talking about estate planning. And my client's going to call me and go, hey man, does estate planning apply to me? Or we're going to have the problem where I think you promised me 100 widgets, I'm only using 20, right? Like all of those problems are solved by saying, is this relevant to Dave and Diane? Okay, I'll send this to Dave and Diane.
Well, and if all your clients are like Dave and Diane, it just gets really simple. Either everybody cares about it or they don't, because
exactly.
you got to stay on client base.
Yeah, because I think relevance to me is the key word. Like I'm going to pay for relevant advice that shows up in my life. If it's irrelevant, you're actually just gonna make me a little bit frustrated.
Yeah.
If I keep getting irrelevant stuff from you, it's like the widgets I didn't want.
Well, and I think in that theme, right, just to get to the last point that you'd raise, right, just this phenomenon of if we try to hit clients with, stick with it, we try to hit clients with the sledgehammer of value, and it really is more than they can take, you really do get this fascinating phenomenon of, I only use half your services, so I'm going to fire you because I feel bad that I'm only using half your services.
I must be overpaying.
But if you only offer them a quarter of that service in the first place and they use all of it, they would feel great about it because
that's true.
They feel like they're fully utilizing all the value that's on the table. And just I do see that very commonly as a phenomenon. Like I see it in advisors that go from commission models to AUM models. And then for a while they get super fixated on like, I'm charging a client a fee every quarter. Like I have to do something for them every single quarter. And then they start trying to do that for a while. And then eventually the clients are like, why do we meet so often? Like there's literally not that much to cover. Nothing has changed in my life in the past 90 days. Like, can we stop meeting all the time? I'll just call you when I want to talk to you, or like you call me if there's something going on. I've seen a similar phenomenon as advisors are going towards like retainer structures and monthly service models of a lot of advisors, particularly when monthly subscription models were first getting started. They were like, I'm going to do a monthly thing for my clients where I meet with them every single month of the year. And all of those models flamed out very quickly just because the clients were like, dude, like I have a life. I can't work on my finances every month. I've got other things going on. Like I'm not that, I mean, I'm ready to deal with my finances. That's why I hired you, but like, I'm not that ready to deal with my finances in a crash course. Like I can only do so much of this with you. And so we see a lot of advisors that like, they start out with monthly and quarterly meetings, and then it goes to quarterly or semi-annual, and then it just backs up to semi-annual. And sometimes it's only annual if the client's got nothing going on. And I do think there's a version of that you're articulating well here, that not to say, therefore, we can all necessarily get away with, Kevin's model. I'm just going to sit around and wait until they call and then respond rapidly when they do. Like, just maybe it's my own personal bias. Like, kudos to Kevin for building a model that worked around that. Like, I do feel some pressure to be a little bit more proactive and regular. I think both that part of that's my service mentality. Part of that is you do look at some of the research around client retention, and like the single biggest predictor of client retention is basically how often you interact with your clients. Like, just there is something to frequency of touch points and engagements. It does matter. Kevin's model of success notwithstanding. But I do think it I think Meg's question highlights like she sort of frames like, how do you think about the balance? And just first of all, I would say like, I do think it's a balance. I'm not sure everyone can get away with the Kevin extreme, but clearly there's a version of like, I'm so proactive, I can't actually do anything but my proactive thing that I'm now like locked into and stuck into. But I think the secondary piece that does go with it is trying to fight down maybe that latent fear that we have of like, I have to show more, do more to get that next client, and recognize that if you come at clients too hard with the sledgehammer of value, like you really can just so knock them over that it doesn't feel good for them. And they actually don't retain because you tried to do more than they could do. And they end up feeling bad. They can't utilize the sledgehammer of value for themselves.
Well, it's more than
I can't let go
I
of
know
Sledgehammer about you.
it's really unfortunate. But that's now stuck. It's not only just feeling bad, you literally feel like you're overpaying. I'm only using
Yeah.
50% of what you send me. And so, but the other comment I just want to make, and I just kind of want to let this sit out there. We don't have to talk about it. I just would love people to think about it. Like, what if the greatest outcome for the client? Well, here's a story to demonstrate this. One of my clients, his name was, I'll just call him Dr. Terry. He was a radiologist. His last name is not Terry. We'll call him Dr. Dave. But Dr. Terry's fine because his last name was
we don't know who it is, so I don't think Dr. Dave is any more anonymous than Dr. Terry at this
Dr.
point.
Terry, that's right. So Dr. Terry, he was a radiologist, mountain biked a ton, spent a ton of time outside with his kids, just loved it. And I asked him the question, and there's more to the story that we can talk about another time, but I asked him the question, how often in an ideal world, how often would we talk?
Yeah.
He said in an ideal world, we would never talk.
Yeah.
Right? Like I got a life.
Yeah.
Like you seem nice. I remember him I think he did say that. Like you seem like a great guy and everything. But
did you stop calling him?
Well, there is a long story to that. Yeah, I mean, we slowed down on to calling him, and he called me one day and was like, "What do you do?" And I said, "Well, you told me that I should never call you." He said, "We weren't there yet." But it took us another 12 months to get there. And that 12 months, he was like, "You know what, we're there now." So my question is, what if the ideal scenario for clients is we talk less frequently? Like we've literally taken the plate from them. You don't have to think about this anymore. You don't have to worry about this anymore. And I don't have to rush around trying to prove my value. Like I'd be tempted to build something now that sent out an email probably twice a month, the 1st and the 15th, that would literally just say, what financial questions can I help you with? You know, hit reply or text me, let me know. If there's nothing, awesome, I'll talk to you in 2 weeks. Like I'm super curious if I was just like, please know that I'm here for rapid response. Here's some questions you might not have thought of. Like we could do that too. Like, did you buy a new business? Did you sell something? Did you like you don't even know to ask me? You're going to lease a car, call me. You know, but all generated around, I'm here for rapid response for your financial questions. I happen to know the questions you're thinking of because I know your niche and I know that you're 7 years into being an orthodontist and about that time you need to do this and you're going to buy your building and you're like, you could really AI quote unquote that out.
Yep.
A beautiful way if you were niched. And again, to Meg's point, right? Like that allows me to, I think the answer to this whole question is it's a mix, right? It depends. And I'm sure it's a mix. You know, your version of, can we automate the stuff we're doing anyway? Can we layer on top of that some things that seem to show up at relevant times? And we know those relevant times because we've dealt with this, we've pattern matched so well with this group. Like, so we're actually demonstrating value before people even know it. You know, like that stuff's fascinating to me.
My big takeaway for it, I mean, just it certainly rings true to me of thinking back of evolution of client relationships over the years, but just there is a phenomenon that goes with this, that clients just hit this crossover point like 4 or 5 years into the relationship. You just hit this level of, I really trust you. I'm really on board. I don't think we need to meet so much anymore. Like just you call me when something's going on and I'll call you if I got something to talk about. So I think it raises an interesting question of, is it even possible that this balancing point actually changes through the scope of the client relationship? Because there's a difference between a client that I've been working with for 5+ years where I say, whenever you need something, just call me and I'm here and I'll respond rapidly. And having a client in the first year being like, hey, yeah, I'm just here whenever something comes up. Like, because we're not there yet, but we get there at some point. So maybe part of the dynamic is that this balance actually shifts over time as we spend the multi-year process of really building that deep level of trust. So
let me just say one more thing about that, because that experience with Dr. Terry actually generated what we called the financial pornography detox program, where we actually kind of set up the idea that when we got to the point that we were no longer talking much, we had arrived at the most valuable spot in your life, right? So we didn't set it up as if like, oh, when you stop hearing from me, we both have to be worried that I'm billing you and I'm not delivering value. We set it up the opposite. Like, hey, Terry, when we get to this point, there's going to be a point 12 to 18 months from now where things are going to really feel settled. You know, when we do that, like high five.
Yeah.
Like we're in like, that's when I've become really valuable. Like we're setting it up beforehand so we don't have to be worried about this. Oh no, what am I doing for my money?
All right.
Anyway, financial
I like
pornography
it.
detox program, Sledgehammer of value.
Well, and just and finding that balance of why are you trying to do all the additional stuff that you're doing? What problem are you really trying to solve to get there?
Exactly. What's the problem we're solving for anyway? Super fun, Michael.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you, Carl.